The Citizens United case was based on a couple of hundred years of First American jurisprudence, First Amendment jurisprudence. It talked about the rights of freedom of speech. It talked about how when you're actually involved in political speech, how that raises the bar. That is a stricter scrutiny by every stretch of constitutional law. So if we're going to overturn that decision, is it the understanding or expectation of the proponent that we could just basically go and pick and choose what Supreme Court cases we like or don't like? We've had constitutional conventions to propose amendments to the Constitution. We've had constitutional conventions or calls for constitutional conventions to strike portions of the Constitution. We've had similar type of referendums to, in fact, draft the Constitution, because as most folks may know, this is actually our second form of federal government. Actually, it's our third. We had a constitutional Congress, then we had the Articles of the Confederation, now we have the United States Constitution that was passed in the late 1780s. So, under the construct of what we're trying to pursue here, we can change that Constitution. That's what a constitutional convention does. But this resolution appears to just be aimed at one decision. Now, maybe there's a way to craft a new constitutional amendment, I forgot what number we're on now, 20-something, that would sort of address what you're talking about. But if we're going to attack Citizens United versus the Federal Election Commission, we're going to be undermining the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. Freedom of speech, freedom of political expression, freedom to join and gather and communicate with each other, freedom to unionize. In fact, that's exactly why one of the main reasons why unions have received the type of legal protection they've had in the last 60, 80 years because of the First Amendment. Because of the First Amendment. So, it's one of these things where you could sort of flippantly say, well, Citizens United, bad decision, let's just get rid of it. Well, guess what goes with it? Hundreds of years of First Amendment jurisprudence. And that's a real concern. This resolution doesn't say, well, let's see what we could do to either create new federal and or state election laws to comply or be sympathetic to the First Amendment and free speech that we've enjoyed for hundreds of years. This says, let's overturn it. Let's overturn a United States Supreme Court decision based on all the jurisprudence incited in that decision, which guarantee free speech. You got to be careful when we're talking about the First Amendment is first, I think, for a reason. Now, I think in the original draft, I think Madison had it at 8, and it slowly got moved up to 2, and then by the end of the convention, it actually ended up at 1. But it ended up 1 for a reason. The reason that we are a free people, the reason that our friends and neighbors are a free people, and the reason that we've been able to improve our society through a whole bunch of different measures done in bodies like this and throughout the United States is our ability to speak freely and openly and advocate for a position, to advocate for a political position, whether you agree with it or not, whether it's pro-union, anti-union, whether it's pro-gun, anti-gun, whether it's pro-abortion, anti-abortion, whatever it is, the ability to pool your money, pool your thoughts, pool your reasoning, and advocate for a position is precisely why we are a free people, precisely what the First Amendment's intended to do, and precisely the basis of the rationale of the Citizens United decision. The unintended consequences may be, yeah, in fact, some big nasty corporation can write a big check. Yep, absolutely. But what the federal law can do, and in some cases does do, says, whatever the size of that check is, just let us know who wrote it. So everybody knows. Everybody knows who's getting funded by whomever. And maybe there's some revisions to federal and state law that we can address that. But by saying overturn a United States Supreme Court decision, we don't do that. I mean, that's not how you amend the Constitution. The Supreme Court's decision in Citizens United v. Federal Election Commission at 558 U.S. 310, open paren, 2010, close paren, is hereby overturned. That is not the way we amend our United States Constitution. Never has been. Never has been. That's why I asked before about the Wickards v. Filburn decision. I think I said Fillmore. It's Filburn. We didn't do that. What we have been doing, and in fact, our Supreme Court went back and addressed that Commerce Clause issue in a couple of recent decisions. That's how jurisprudence gets advanced in our separation of power system, both at the state and federal level. We don't legislate away federal decisions willy-nilly. If there's a U.S. constitutional amendment that's going to change the landscape, well, then maybe we do that. Maybe we do that. But here, we're undermining the First Amendment. And that is just shocking to me. Now, again, if you believe in the First Amendment, you believe in things, frankly, in my opinion, like flag burning. I don't like seeing our flag burned, but I think the funny part is the folks have actually died for our protections, died in order to let folks have the ability to make that kind of expression. The First Amendment has an ugly side, but that's what makes us a free society. Money, expression, pooling of thoughts, pooling of resources. That's what the First Amendment allows. And the Citizens United decision was based, again, on hundreds of years of jurisprudence that says just that. So if we're going to join with 4 or 5 other states and say, you know what, we like the First Amendment, except for this part over here, I can't be a part of that. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This thing could be a runaway. That's what happens. I mean, potentially states could limit the authority that the delegates have when they go down to an Article 5 convention. In fact, it's happened before where there was an argument about whether or not what was ratified at certain conventions was ultra vires because whether or not the delegates exceeded the scope of their authority. But if we're going to do this, if we're going to actually do an Article 5 convention, let's actually jump on board as something that I think most of our citizens and our constituents want, a balanced federal budget. If we're going to do it, let's do something that our citizens want and need, not rewriting and degrading and undermining the First Amendment. So if we're going to be in for a penny, let's go in for the full pound. Thank you, Madam Speaker.